Soul Sparks, where inner mastery meets outer strength. I'm your host, Saima, and today we are joined by the coach Chris Malgeri, fitness visionary, martial arts expert, and transformational mindset coach. His approach is bold, balanced, and deeply rooted in discipline. From body to mind, from dojo to daily life, Chris teaches us how true wellness is about more than just workouts, it's about wisdom. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're warmly welcome. I'm glad to have you here. So, Chris, like martial arts isn't just about combat, it's a way of life. So, I'm really curious to know that how did this path shape your own sense of discipline and purpose?
Well, to begin, I started martial arts because I really liked the old kung fu, the Chinese kung fu movies. My dad and I used to watch them
Mm-hmm.
young. So I didn't have a story where I got beat up as a kid or anything. For me, martial arts has always been about enjoyment and fulfillment, right? So yes, it's important to have a sense of um being able to defend oneself. But for me, martial art has always been about a path towards self improvement, a path towards self mastery. So instead of thinking that there's an opponent or there's a crisis around every corner, the challenges of martial arts from learning to put on a uniform, the gi, and how to tie the belt and how to stand with discipline and respect and how to follow the commands of your various instructors and how to make sure you're following a sense of discipline outside of class, so you're doing the required practices and other things. That's always been where the challenge but also the reward comes in, right? Because these are transcendent qualities, right? If you have
Mm-hmm.
the discipline to stand in the stands and drill the same technique over and over until you've developed a sense of proficiency, then we can translate that and we can transform other aspects of your life, whether it's work, whether it's interpersonal relationships, whether it's school, depending on where are you in life and what are you trying to accomplish.
That's incredibly powerful, Chris. Hearing that how, martial arts are shaped not just your actions, but your mindset really brings home the deeper impact it can have.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that most people misunderstand martial arts as purely physical? And what's the mental or spiritual layer that's often missed?
Well, to begin with, I think one has to define for themselves why they would engage in martial arts. I would agree that if you haven't seen martial arts from the inside, if you are a spectator, perhaps you've seen a movie, perhaps you've watched some of the very popular ultimate fighting and mixed martial arts, or you've seen jujitsu tournaments, kickboxing, you will see obviously the physical prowess, right? You will see the years that it cultivates to be a good athlete. You will see what it cultivates to be a good combatant, right? Whether it's in self defense or more probably in a sporting environment. But the way I like to think about martial arts is in terms of need. Why are we doing this exercise? Why are we doing this activity? So if we say, hey, I live in a terrible environment where I want to assure myself of some level of self protection, that's a very legitimate goal. If I live in a safer environment where I want a good hobby to get myself in shape and I want to keep myself active and it's interesting and I can learn about another culture, that's a different goal. If I want to win trophies and medals and I want to be a competitor, more in a sports environment, that's fine. I've done some of all of that. Or if you are in military or law enforcement and you need martial arts skills as a practical everyday um, a way to improve whatever aspect, right? If you're in law enforcement um, and you need to safely control somebody, first we define what the goal is, right? And then we can decide and go about which martial art suits you. And then we can talk about what are the attributes, what are the developmental skills that you can get from each martial art, right? Some things depending on how it teaches them, right? If you're going into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or something, just as a sport, there are certain psychological um, skills like discipline, respect, commitment to the daily grind of daily training, right? Those are obviously great things you can get from any sport. If you're going into an art a little more deeply, where you're learning about the spirituality, the philosophy, perhaps you're delving not only into the physical aspects in terms of the movement, but the more internal aspects of the breath work, the meditation, the focus, um, perhaps in a kung fu system, a kalari or something like this. Um, you can start to seek out the goal and say, okay, this is what I want to bring to my life. Now, how do I go about doing that? I would agree. If you're just watching the movies and you see two people beating each other up on film, you're going to think martial art is a very physical activity, which of course it can be, but just moving slowly, under control, doing your forms with discipline, doing your forms with commitment and intention is its own kind of internal, mental, spiritual, physical. It brings you a sense of well-being in these areas, right? So I'm really focused on what's the why? Why are we doing this? And then we can figure out the rest of what has to happen.
I really appreciate the depth you brought to that, Chris. I mean, it's so easy, especially, from the outside to reduce martial arts to what we see on the surface. But like the way you describe the mental and spiritual layers, it really reveals how much more there is beneath that. And it's clear that martial arts can be a path of self mastery, not just self defense, right?
Absolutely. Right. Because ultimately, in martial arts, like anything else, you only have yourself to rely on, right? So you have to determine what level of commitment you're going to bring to a martial arts practice. And I think that's often reflected in how people commit to other things in their life, right? Very often, if one is committed to a deep martial arts practice, they can use that commitment, that intention, that discipline and respect, and they can apply that to their parenting skills, their interpersonal relationship skills in a marriage, perhaps, how they are as an employee, or how they are as a boss, how they are as a student, right? We can use a synergistic method, right? As our way here. That is to say, we can build upon the mental, spiritual, and emotional skills developed in martial arts to enhance and improve all the other aspects of our life.
Absolutely, yes. So, like you coach people in both mindset and muscle, so where do you see most people get stuck when trying to change their lives?
First of all, we need to define reasonable goals that if somebody says especially in our day and age, if somebody says, hey, I want to lose weight, all right, that will make me feel better, right? Or I want to accomplish X, Y, or Z things. First, we have to create a reasonable set of goals. Now, the mechanism whereby we accomplish these things can be various. You could use martial arts, it could be fitness, it could be yoga, meditation, dance, what have you. But first, we have to decide, where do we want to go, the short term, medium term, long term, and what kind of commitment, what are we willing to commit to? Because if you don't commit to a practice, maybe you do it for a couple of weeks and then you find, I'm not getting the results I want, so you quit. This is, I think, the first problem is clearly defining goals, setting expectations, making adjustments along the way, but committing to a path, because that path will reveal itself as yes, it's working, or no, we have to make some adjustments, right? But you have to be willing to put in a certain amount of commitment and a certain amount of effort, which is where I would tell people, if you're confused about what to do because, for example, I want to lose weight or just get in better health, maybe you should experiment, take a 2-week yoga course or an introductory to martial arts or introductory to ballroom dance. Get your feet wet in a couple different areas and figure out what you are willing to commit yourself to. in order to change yourself, right? If you start a dance class, right? Um, my wife and I did a lot of Argentine tango and salsa and these kind of things. And the act of moving to music will change you. It'll change your psychology. It'll change your physiology. But sometimes maybe it's a little embarrassing. Maybe you're off further. So you need to commit to yourself to, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to suppress a little bit of my ego thinking that this has to happen overnight. And I'm going to then, once I commit to, I'm going to enjoy the process, right? What's something that you can do that you want to do that you can continue on with, right? Whether it's martial arts or anything else. This is why, if you look at a martial arts school of, let's imagine 100 students, you're going to get 50 white belts, right? And then as you go through the colors, maybe there will be 25 blue belts and there will be, 10 purple belts and three brown belts and one black belt, right? Because people quit. Perhaps this wasn't for them. Perhaps they didn't commit to it as deeply as they could. Perhaps they didn't have realistic expectations of what they could accomplish and how they could accomplish it, right? So the planning was not thoroughly engaged, right? So it's important to find something that you will enjoy, that you can commit to, that you're willing to make adjustments along the way, and really enjoy the process, whatever that happens to be. Right? You might find that I started martial arts. It's really cool, but I want to go to a gym and jump on a Peloton bike, and I want to get on with the loud music, and I just want to do a soul cycle. Or that's fine too, right? Martial arts is not for everyone if it doesn't suit them, right? Martial arts can be for everybody. There's a kind of martial art that will suit almost anybody, but you have to give it some commitment and you have to want to do it. And I think that's where people get stuck, is they may give a half-hearted attempt and then throw their hands up in the air. Oh, this didn't work the way I wanted to, so I'm going to quit. um, I think that having a goal and having a plan and having a guide to help you achieve that is very important.
Mhm. Absolutely, yes. That's such a grounded perspective, Chris. It really brings it back to clarity and commitment, like as you said. And I too feel that knowing where we want to go and being honest about what we are willing to give up or lean into, that's where the real inner work starts, right?
Absolutely, I agree.
So let's talk about wellness now. It's a buzzword now, but
Sure.
you embody it holistically. That's so great. So, what does true wellness look like to you?
Well, wellness, like every other term, has to be defined by the person you're talking to. So for me specifically, when I'm talking about wellness, I think about it in the mind, body, spirit, emotional kind of connection, right? So wellness is I think of it more like a process than a product. Okay. So I contribute to my wellness every day by making sure I drink enough water, making sure I eat healthy whole foods, making sure that I do my breathing, making sure that I take some time to walk outside. I'm fortunate where I live, pretty much year round I can be outside, um, getting some sun. So the process of paying attention to what I refer to as like the mini rituals of the day, right? I like to have so it seems like it's a little bit more substantive, right? Substantive. So it has meaning to me to go out and walk the dog and walk in the grass and get grounded to the earth. That contributes to my overall sense of wellness and well-being, which we could refer to as that sense of contentedness, right? Making sure I'm moving my body every day. In my case, practicing martial arts and working on my athleticism, right? A lot of breath work, a lot of meditation. I work out a lot with my children, right? So now I'm connecting on not it's a parenting level, but it's also a teacher student level. But now my son is taller than me, so now he's become more of a training partner than a pupil to me in some ways. So wellness is a process by which you find yourself. And if you find yourself fairly happy and fairly content and finding meaning in the things you are doing, as opposed to I'm drinking water because somebody on Instagram told me I need to drink a lot of water, or I'm doing the breath work because somebody on Facebook said if you do so much breathing. You want to find out, you want to connect to these processes, these rituals through the day, um, because there's always things we have to do, right? We have to make enough money to survive, to pay the mortgage, to pay the for take care of our children, to buy food. There are things we have to do, and then things that, should our lifestyle allow it, we get to do. So to me, I really revel in the micro workouts, the 5 minutes of breath work, the periodic stretching throughout the day, the taking the dog for a walk, the exercise time and things like this. So I don't think of wellness as a end point where if I am at this weight and this percent body fat and that kind of thing, then I'll be well, I'll be happy, right? I think of wellness as the actions that I take every day, the the rituals that I enjoy, that I bring meaning to my life in, especially the small ways, because they add up so powerfully, right? When you get up and you walk in the morning, or one of my favorite exercises that I enjoy is, especially at night, you sit down with the family and then we have dinner, and then you go out and you walk for 10, 15 minutes, right? Yes, there's all kinds of physiological benefits and digestion, and you'll sleep better, etc. Yeah, there's the science is there. But taking that time, that to invest in taking that walk and relaxing and spending time with the family and making that part of the the contentedness, the happiness of the day, I think that's where wellness is. It's the things you do to improve the quality of your life on a habitual, or I like to say in a ritualistic basis. It's something, because when we create rituals, we create meaning, right? When we go downstairs and we do our meditations as a family, or you do, if you prayers or whatever you do, that has meaning. And if you think of things as, I want to do this to bring meaning to myself, versus I have to eat so much protein because my doctor said so, you're more likely to commit to and follow through with things that you want to do than external things that people either impose upon you, or perhaps without context you see somebody in a social media environment say, hey, if you want to look and feel a certain way, you need to do hydrogen water or some such thing, right? So you say, okay, fine, I'm going to do that. But that's external. We want to internalize what we're doing and make sure we find meaning and contentedness. And that adds up on a day to day, moment by moment, to what our wellness is. Right. And I think that's where I think that's how I would layer that out for somebody.
Mhm. Oh, I love that perspective, Chris. Like wellness is something deeply personal, not just like one size fits all. And it really highlights that how it can be both grounding and connective. It's inspiring to hear that how intentional you are with it. Not it's not just routines, it's a lifestyle that reflects your values, it seems, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's hard to commit to something externally, right? But if you make
Mhm.
it part of your value system, if you say, I get to do this, I want to do this, it brings me fulfillment, it's a lot easier to stick to it. It's a lot easier to share it with others without being imposing, or people feel like, hey, like you hear sometimes people in the CrossFit community get so into doing what they're doing that it seems like they're in a cult or something, right? What you want to do is say, hey, I'm enjoying my life. I'm sharing my life with the people
Mm,
that I love. And I'm bringing to my life the activities that make me a better person, make me feel better, make me more grounded, make me happier. And I think that is ultimately where we want to be.
yes, I completely agree with that. Now, If someone's listening right now feeling lost or out of shape physically and mentally, what's the first small move they can make to reclaim their power?
Start with the basics and then layer activities on a weekly basis or a biweekly basis like this. For example, if someone is uncomfortable in their own skin, instead of jumping into a program and saying, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to get my amino acids in, I'm going to go walk, instead of having so many activities to feel overwhelming, maybe for the first 3 days, you just pay attention to drinking a bit more water every day. Right. And then you say, hey, today I'm going to start by going for a 10-minute walk every day, or then I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk twice a day, or something like this, right? It's always better to start small and build up and add layers as your body acclimates and your mind acclimates to new activities than it is to jump head first. Not many people can do that and stay the course. Um, and then the other thing would be to investigate in your local area. Hey, I need to get in shape. Are there activities that interest me where I could find a free trial class, a free membership, right? Maybe a trial class, a 1 week free kind of thing, where I can go in and give it a shot, right? I can take a dance class, I can take this. And then look, as you create a plan over, say, on your diet, for example, I'm going to start by a couple of days. I'm just going to make sure I'm drinking more water. So I start to get that hydration. I'm feeling that. And then, depending on who I'm talking to and what their needs are, I'm going to say, okay, now start increasing your protein a little bit and getting rid of processed foods a little bit at a time, right? So you're sort of adding a little bit of what's positive and subtracting some of the things you don't need, but you're doing it in a methodical way so as not to cause too much shock to the system. So if you end up in a mental, physical, emotional rut, you don't fall back into eating junk food or drinking, sodas instead of water, right? So you need to, just like when you're building muscle, you need to start at a certain weight and a certain intensity and develop more strength over time. We need to do that with our diet. We need to do that with our meditation, our breath work. Start small and build yourself up. And again, experiment. If you find, hey, I want to take jujitsu. I love Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It looks really cool. But when I go to this school, all I see is a bunch of young guys really beating up on each other. And maybe I'm out of shape. Maybe I don't want to get hurt. Maybe I go to another school where I see that, hey, these guys are um, they're more technical. They're taking their time. They're teaching a little better, right? So you've got to find a community that you can connect with. Find teachers that will meet you where you are and guide you to where you want to be. That's also very important, right? If a teacher, you go into a school and the guy says, hey, this is how we do things, this is how it's been done for, decades and centuries, and you don't fit into that group, you're not going to ultimately be happy. If somebody comes in and they're perhaps out overweight or something, I can say, all right, based on what I know about you, I can guide you in this way and that way to help you improve your quality of life, learn the martial art, do what you want to do without expecting you to fit into the same class as a 20-year-old athlete, right? So small steps, small rituals will build up over time and surprisingly quickly, right? So this is not, you can see drastic changes in a couple months with small adjustments to whatever it is that you're doing, right? So if you're eating too much junk food, so you, instead of cutting it all out and then in a week later failing, you may start to slowly eliminate what you're doing each day, and you might find in 3 weeks or a month you're eating 25% of what you did at the beginning of this path. So it's really possible with some presence, right? Being present, paying attention to what's going on, that you can facilitate these small adjustments, but then they compound with all the little things you're changing to have grand results.
That really hits home, Chris. Like starting with the basic is such a powerful reminder. And Coach Chris, you doesn't train bodies, you awaken warriors. So, listeners, if you have been waiting for a sign to reclaim your strength, this is it. The battle is not outside you, it's within, and you're strong enough to win it. Step forward, stand tall, and remember, you are the fighter, the fire, and the calm of the storm.